Hello, everyone. I just wanted to welcome Anna today. Anna is a podcast manager and launch strategist, launching and managing profitable podcasts for founders who are a force to be reckoned with and helping you create mic drop moments. Okay, so hi, Anna. How are you today?
Hi, I'm so good. Thank you for that lovely introduction. It's so good to see you again and talk again.
Yes, so I am so excited to have you on here. Anna is one of my past clients, and I always love having my clients come on here because chemistry and understanding is just on another level.
For
Um,
sure.
but a bit of a backstory, we initially started working together to help you, market and convert clients for your business when you were a virtual assistant. But so much more came from that. And
Yeah.
I would love to kind of dive into your story and, you know, what that journey looked like for you.
Yeah, for sure. So I came to you as a virtual assistant and I was literally not selling packages beyond $200. Like, didn't know what I was selling. I remember getting on social media every day and just being like, outsource, like not saying anything but that because I genuinely had no offerings. It was just like everyone I got on a discovery call with, I would do something different for them. And I was feeling really stuck with that and didn't feel like I had any like hard skills to offer, even though I had been in corporate America for like a year and a half at that point. Like I had graduated college, went into corporate America as a project manager. I definitely had skills, but I just like had no idea how to translate it to the online world at all. So that's where you came in and you were so helpful with that. And like, I don't even know, 2 weeks into working with you, maybe less than that, I remember Voxering you and just being like, hey, so I just had this idea. What if I worked with podcast hosts? Because, with virtual assistants, it's kind of like, who do you want to work with? And at first I was like, maybe I'll do the wedding designer or wedding photographer thing because that's what I'm seeing a lot of other people do. But I didn't really have any stake in the game when it came to wedding photographers. Like, didn't know anything about that world, but I did know that I've been listening to podcasts for years, like years and years. And I feel like I almost have learned more from podcasts than, I don't know, college. So I was like, if I could give back to these podcasters somehow and work with them in some way, like any capacity, I would love to do that. So I reached out to you and like told you about that idea. And you totally validated it. And we're like, let's do this. Like, on our next call, we're going to do a deep dive into that and figure out how we can make that happen for you. And a lot of imposter syndrome was coming up because I was like, I don't have any skills. But you really helped me through that. And by the end of our time working together, I had multiple podcast clients and was just making it happen. So
Yeah. I
yeah.
love that. And I love your story so much. And it's so crazy because, like, I was right there with you. So it's just
Yeah.
really fascinating, kind of like looking back at it and experiencing it at the time. But I just knew instantly, like, your energy was like ready to go against the grain. And I could tell that you were so passionate about doing your own thing. But
Mhm.
virtual assistant just wasn't that thing for you. And
Right.
I say, like, I remember telling you, like, passion can go so far. Like, if you're feeling passionate, if you're feeling aligned to something, that can take you, it doesn't matter how unskilled you are, you're going to make it work. You're going to get
Exactly.
skills, you're going to learn more, you're going to experience more,
Yeah.
and you're going to go for it a lot more than when you're unhappy, unaligned, and, unpassionate about what you do. So, I could just like hear you throw this idea out there and you're like, is this gonna work? Is this something like I could do? I'm like, hell yeah, like of course you can do that. And I could just like
Yeah.
feel your energy and like instantly, like right after that call, you did. I remember you like doing so much research going into different like courses and different people to help support you and expand your
Mhm.
knowledge in that area because of course like it's daunting going into something where you don't know like a lot about. You just have that idea, that excitement that, carries you through it. But but you really went out of your way to deep dive, like literally like
Yeah.
immerse yourself so much in that industry. And it was so amazing to see. So since then, you've been able to like really perfect your signature methods. And something that you have like emphasized with your clients is, the amazing ability to leverage and maximize podcasts. Even like during that time of working with you and as you're learning new things and discovering new things,
Mhm.
I learned so much from you and
Oh,
even applied
good.
that to my own podcast. And
Amazing.
I was just like, oh wow, season one was not very consistent, very fun. Let's kind of like amp it up a little bit for season two because of just like hearing all of the amazing benefits that come with podcasting.
Mhm.
So how did you come up to, create all of your signature methods and, how your podcasting style is today with working with your clients and converting those episodes to
Yeah.
sales and growing a
Right.
community?
Yeah. So I remember working with you and at the beginning being like, okay, so I want to work with podcast hosts, but how do you even make money from a podcast? Like, are these people going to be willing to pay for help? Because podcasting is a free platform. Everyone has access to podcasts. It's not like it's behind a paywall. So, how are these people making money? Is it a profitable thing? And as I dove deeper into it, I was like, oh my gosh, it's so profitable. Like, if you use podcasting as the top of your sales funnel, it is so amazing the results that I've seen people get. Like, I just had a client like completely sell out her course, like oversell it because two people bought at the last minute. But it was like, at first, I thought it was just this free platform that was really a hobby for people. And it is that, like, it can be that for people. People can just start passion project podcasts, and that's one thing, and that's amazing. But when we're talking about like business owners who are starting a podcast, most of the time, they're not going to have time to just have a podcast that's a hobby and purely a hobby. If they want to do that, that's amazing. But for the most part, what I'm helping with is podcasts that are more than that and creating a podcast that's nurturing your audience and establishing you as an expert in your field. And it's also an evergreen thing. So with social media, you're posting and kind of on this hamster wheel of like always posting, always posting. And it can feel like a lot. And a lot of the times you'll build up systems or you'll have a team for that, and it won't be crazy like a lot. But
Mm-hmm.
with a podcast, you've got hours and hours and hours for a potential client. Like if you have an ideal client that finds you on Instagram, there's only so much information they're going to get out on Instagram. They'll probably
Mm-hmm.
stalk you on Instagram. Of course they will before they're going to buy a high ticket thing. But if you have a podcast that's nurturing them even more, then they have hours to go to determine whether you're right for them or not. And the most qualified leads are going to come from your podcast because these
Mm-hmm.
people have now dedicated real time to getting to know you, getting to know your offerings before they make the leap. So with podcasting, you can definitely have like ads and stuff like that and sponsorships and memberships and everything like that. But when it comes to small businesses, it's learning how to create content that converts your podcast listeners across the board. Um, yeah, it's just
Yeah.
and it can feel so much more light and intuitive, at least for me. Everybody
Mm-hmm.
like creates content differently. So sometimes for some people, long form content and that kind of thing is a harder mental hurdle to get over. But like this right now, this is just a conversation. This is just
Mm-hmm.
two people like vibing and having fun. Um, but over on Instagram, it would feel a little bit different. It's hard to
Yeah.
really get all of this across in short form content. So, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I think I've just really been focusing on making sure that the overall content strategy with my clients is geared towards making them sales.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a difference between a growth strategy with podcasting and a sales strategy with podcasting. And it's great if your podcast gets thousands and thousands of listeners, but for business owners, that's not always the objective, like
Yeah.
that's amazing. And if you are consistent for long enough, you'll probably get there. But my real goal for my clients is to make it a profitable practice.
I feel like podcasting, especially if you're running an online service-based business, it's so organic, I feel like,
Hmm.
and even recently after, taking my podcast a little bit more seriously with the help of you, um, I think like even through inquiries and like clients that I've been able to take on, they're like, I love your podcast. And I'm like seeing this cycle of like repetition of people being like, I love your podcast, or I've learned so much from it, or, I really got to know you. And
Hmm.
again, like the way that I was approaching it wasn't so much of like, you know, getting thousands of downloads or anything. It's just like an additional resource and like
Yeah.
place for those to take in the content and learn more, again, like in a long form kind of thing.
Hmm.
um and it just shows that you're able to learn and connect with someone like so closely. Like even reflecting on like our favorite podcast hosts and such, you feel like they're your friend in a way,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
Like I'm constantly being like, oh yeah, this person said this the other day, love it. And that's just like my life motto now, right?
Yeah.
um and it's great because you get to be that person for someone else. And even
Hmm.
like for those who are tuning in right now, you can kind of get a better sense of like what our coaching dynamic was like, right? And
Hmm.
like coaching client relationship in this capacity, and also like just learning so much about you, your methods and your style and your approach to podcasting, so I
Right.
think it's just so fascinating. And it truly is like the way you articulate things, the way you're sharing different examples, all of that is really important in order to connect with someone. And I feel like listening to long form content, and I feel like YouTube is like that as well, right? Like I
Yeah, for
went
sure.
through childhood to now, because very like Gen Z millennial almost, of like consuming all of this content from YouTubers, but I feel like
Hmm.
podcast is kind of like shifting into that, and having a hybrid of both is also like very powerful.
Yeah, for sure. If you can be on both platforms, like I've had clients that had a lot of YouTube videos that they were like, I just want to create this and make it a podcast. Like, I already have all of these recordings. Can we somehow make it into a podcast? And I'm like, yeah, all you have to do is build it out this way and make an intro. And if you want an ad, you can put an ad in there, but you already have the recording from your YouTube. You extract the audio, and there you go. You've got a
Hmm.
podcast. And it works the same way with podcast to YouTube. Like you said at the beginning of this recording, you're going to go put this recording on YouTube. So
Yeah.
it's like not one or the other. You can have both pieces of long form content working for you at the same time. And also, another thing I love about podcasting, as it's like a cornerstone piece of content. So if you are building your podcast around a sales strategy, like I was saying before, it's so easy to go in and take snippets of it and build out your entire content strategy for the week. Like you
Hmm.
just take little sound bites, and one can become a reel and one can become a carousel, like it can stretch in crazy ways. And it also, I know I keep saying like it can be sales strategy, your podcast can make sales, but at the same time, it's not just a big sales page. Like it's you being you. And that's
Hmm.
what's amazing about it, is that you're calling in those people that love you for you, which is so
Hmm.
powerful. But yeah, I mean, the way that podcast recordings can stretch are just, it's insane to me.
Yeah, I feel like podcasts being such a, difficult thing to manage is kind of a misconception, or more so like podcast is just like too much to take on,
Mm,
or podcast is just like not worth it. I feel like those are like the biggest misconceptions ever when it comes to, being a business owner, or even like having that passion project on the side. Um, and like you said, being able to take that long form content and convert it to short form content. Um, I also, see this like theme of people saying like, I have no idea what type of content to create. I have no ideas kind of like going through my head. Or when I like show up on video, I'm just like blabbering and off topic or just like never on
Mhm.
topic or don't know what to say. I feel like when you like sit down and you just kind of talk, you have a conversation with yourself or, with someone on your podcast, I feel like you can be able to naturally spew what is on
Mhm.
your mind and what you're trying to get across, right?
Right. I I have a very like there's a couple of different ways to look at podcasting, and
Mhm.
a big part of it is networking. So a lot of it is like if you're feeling uninspired to sit down and record a whole long form piece of content because inspiration or energy is low, that's totally understandable. Like sometimes I was talking about this the other day, it does feel unnatural for some of my clients and some people to sit in front of a microphone and just speak for 30 minutes. That can be
Mhm.
really hard, especially if you don't have an outline and you don't have a plan, which is something that I help my clients with, is like making sure that they feel prepared when they get behind the mic. So it's not so much just like, I'm going to go on this tangent and like hope it comes together. Um,
Mhm.
but if you're feeling like, oh my gosh, this is a lot for me to sit in front of this mic and just talk about this topic, even if I do love that topic, the networking opportunities with podcasting are this, like
Mhm.
can instead of just talking, you can talk to someone else and you can literally just have the conversations that you're already having off camera and bring it to a recording. I have
Mhm.
like coffee chats with other business owners, usually like once a week, like random people that I've met on Instagram, and we connect and we'll have a coffee chat. If I wanted to, I could just click record and be like, are you okay with this being a podcast? And there you go. It's a podcast.
Wow,
So
I love that.
it's just a
Yeah.
different way. There's ways that you can reframe podcasting so it doesn't feel so heavy and so like, oh my gosh, this has to be a perfect product that I'm churning out every week. It doesn't have to be that. There does
Mhm.
need to be some planning in order for it to make you a profit, because if nobody knows you're selling anything, then it's just going to be a hobby podcast,
Mhm.
which is fine. But again, I don't think a lot of the people that are in this business space have the time for that. So you do want it to be making a profit for you. Um, so yeah, it's a balance of having like a good strategy in place and
Mhm.
also knowing what you need when your energy is low and having different action plans. If a lot of like, I like to kind of shape my weeks and months around my cycle. So if I know that if one part of my cycle is going to have me be in like really low energy, then I
Mhm.
would batch record my podcast episodes at a time when I'm feeling more energetic and like more in the flow, so that then you have those recordings to have a little safety net for yourself to
Yeah.
continue being consistent.
I love that you brought that up because I was just thinking about this before like our, recording today. And the thing is like with social media, there's so many different styles of like creating TikToks or Reels and I feel like the same thing applies for podcasting, right? Like,
Mhm.
you can have your solo episodes, you can have like that networking opportunity to talk to someone who's also like very like-minded and be able to bounce off of each other's energies. And I learned this thing from you originally of, voice message submissions as well.
Mm,
And if you're like a mentor or a strategist, I feel like that would be like such a perfect opportunity to really break things down as like a case study scenario
for sure.
on the podcast episode. So, I feel like podcasting is it's always been there, but I feel like right now it's very like evolving, right? And there's
Mhm.
so many ways to be creative and show up for it in your own way, in
Yeah.
your own style and make it you, like you said, like make it you instead of,
Mhm.
just spewing or sharing all of your hot takes at once, right?
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the pressure comes in when we feel like we have to say it all at once. Like
Mm.
A lot of the times people will start with really broad topics and then sit down and feel like they need to get through the whole topic in one episode. And it's a lot easier if you break it down beforehand and you're like, okay, what are my like two central questions that I am answering in this episode? We're going to make it that simple. And then in those two questions, you can do examples, you can do case studies, you can do stories, but having that sort of roadmap before you start is really helpful. But also, yeah, knowing yourself and knowing where you're at. And if you want to have a moment where you're like, actually, I just feel inspired to chat right now and I want to just chat with my
Yeah.
audience, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to do it, then do it. Like as much as there are like frameworks that can help when you're feeling low on inspiration or anything like that, there's also so much freedom when you are feeling inspired to follow that and go through. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
really powerful.
I love that. I feel like finding what works best for you and running with it is just so, so important. And, even when we were working together, something that we recognize is that you are so good on video and you're so good like talking to your audience, just the way you articulate things and your conversations. So we really leaned into that versus, like all text or just like all
Hmm.
graphics and things like that, which, you were still doing amazing, but it just wasn't your spark, your thing, right? um
Hmm.
and I feel like if you are running a podcast or um and you're feeling stuck in the way of like being very like perfectionist about what you're saying in the right order, and it feels almost like a script to you.
Hmm.
For me personally, I think in like season one of my podcast is I felt that. I felt like I had to really keep up with this one specific topic for 30 minutes, talk on and on.
Mm.
And in a way, like it just felt so almost scripted in the sense of like I sound so robotic at this point because I just didn't even want to skip a beat or skip,
Mm, yeah.
what I'm trying to say and have everything in here, give as much value as possible. I just really like had uphold this like crazy amount of pressure for myself where it's like I was trying to avoid having to record a podcast and it
Right.
just wasn't fun. And I feel like that's where a lot of people fall off and don't come back to it, even though it's their passion. And even though I feel like a lot of people can thrive from it, is just like finding what works for you, right?
Yeah, I think there's a big underestimation when you sit down for the first time and you've probably been listening to podcasts for a long time and it sounds like people are just talking and it's so easy and everybody is so eloquent. And that's just not, as someone who has edited a lot of podcasts, that's not true. Not to say that my clients aren't eloquent, they are very eloquent. But even I, when I'm trying to do a podcast like on my own and just talk, oh my gosh, there are so many long pauses. There's like completely starting over a sentence, there's stuttering, anything like that. And I always tell my clients, like, that's why I'm here. Don't restart the whole recording and do it all over again and like tires yourself out because it can be so exhausting to try to be perfect for your podcast. And I try to just really drive it home. Like, I am here as your editor for a very real reason. And it's so easy for me to take those pieces out. And it's also a collaborative process. So if I
Mhm.
send back that first edit and you're like, I really hated how I sounded on this part, like that did not make any sense, you can re-record it and we can patch it up and put it in.
Mhm.
It's just knowing that you have a team behind you that cares about the way that you sound and you're not going to sound dumb is so empowering and freeing while you're recording. Because I think that if you sit down and you're like, I have to sound amazing, like I have to be literally life changing for my
Mhm.
clients right now, that's so much pressure to put on your
Mhm.
back. But a lot of new podcasters really do that, especially with the first couple of episodes. It's like, how am I going to knock these first couple episodes out of the park so that everybody comes back? But it's just understanding that your people are your people and they're going to come back. And it's
Mhm.
enough. It's enough to just like trust the expertise that you have, because you do
Yeah.
have amazing expertise, and we can very easily edit out the stutters. Like, it'll be okay.
That's why I loved like creating the launch package with you of like helping someone go from like, oh, I have an idea, I want to start a podcast, to actually like making that a reality for them. And I feel like the
Mhm.
way that you supported or continue to support your clients when launching podcasts is just so um amazing and so like admirable, because a lot goes into it,
Yeah.
and I feel like with every like entrepreneur comes with that ego of like, oh, I got it. I can figure it out on my own. And that goes
Yeah.
through like cycles of having it not work out, or
Hmm.
beating yourself up for it, or being so hard on yourself for not saying the perfect things or stuttering and things like that, when you're consuming so many podcast episodes that are like so perfect, because there was an Anna behind that, right? To help
Right.
them
Well,
edit.
and it's like with the launch package, with the launch like process that I go through with people, something that people who aren't working with me don't see is that there's always a little roadblock somewhere in the process. And it's usually a mindset roadblock that the client has to get through. And it's like, I can't find the perfect intro music, or I can't seem to record this trailer without it sounding robotic. Like, there's something that they just are not like accepting and moving through, but they do, because I'm there, and because I'm there to talk them through it and to like coach them through it. And we get past it, and we always launch on a date that we planned to launch. But when you're doing it alone, those sort of mindset blocks, a lot of the times, will completely derail people and will make them go, oh, I'll deal with this next month or next quarter, because right now I'm too overwhelmed by it. And
Hmm.
that's not to say that I'm like, we better get this done. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like that at all. However much support a person needs, we're going to get through it. And most of the time, it's just imposter syndrome, because they're like not used to hearing themselves recorded in this way. Um, so yeah, it's a really fun process. I think the launch package is one of my favorite things that I offer, because it is so exciting to get it out into the
Yeah.
world. And the first time that they see their podcast up on Spotify, it's like
Mhm.
the most exciting day ever. But yeah, it is like, if you're doing it on your own, there are so many little roadblocks that can derail the whole process.
I feel like you cannot underestimate support, right? Because
Hmm.
like I feel like that applies to everything in business, of like you have this idea, you have this passion behind it, but without that support or that push or that like expert approach to it, it can be
Hmm.
such a struggle internally if you're trying to do it all alone, right?
Right.
So to be able to like be supported through those mindset blocks of like, I hate the way my voice sounds, or I feel uncomfortable like talking to myself, and even having those pointers of like, okay, like have a guest on and network, or
Yeah.
approach it in a different way. And um for you to support your clients like that is just so amazing, because yeah, I've like been through that lens of that first season of just like hating everything about it,
Yeah.
because I wasn't supported in there. So I love that you do that for your clients, and it's so amazing.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it really goes beyond the technical aspects of podcasting, because if you do enough research and you have enough time, you could do it by yourself, sure. But again, as a business owner, is that how you want to spend your time and energy? Like,
Mm,
learning how to build this whole thing out and make sure that you have like professional audio and everything like that. But beyond the technical aspects, it is really helping people through the transition to see themselves as a podcast host. As
mhm,
soon as you decide you are a podcast host and you're going to go through with it, you're a podcast host, you know?
mhm,
And I think something really cool about podcasting is, as soon as you're a podcast host, that's a different level of authority, no matter what the contents of your podcast are, because there are people that will never take that step, no matter how long they listen to podcasts and they admire the podcast hosts and they wish they would have done it. They're not doing it because they're saying one day, or they're saying, I don't have enough to say.
Mm-hmm.
Like, as soon as you make the leap and you decide to do it and it's published and out there, it's like, hell yeah, you
Yeah.
are an authority in this space because you
Mm-hmm.
decided you were going to put it out there.
Yeah, plant more seeds, right? And I feel like,
Exactly.
stepping into the world, like if you're tuning in right now and you're feeling really daunted, start off as a guest speaker first with like on
Hmm.
other podcasts and just like network in that way and see how you feel and vibe with it and have like the best time of your life. I just feel like you have to try everything. You have
Yeah, I
to
mean,
go for
po-
it.
yeah, podcasting. I was listening to another business podcast where the host said podcasting is the hackiest way to network. And I was like, oh my God, that's amazing because it's so true. Like, whether you have a podcast or you're going on other podcasts as a guest, how else are you going to get in the chair with those people? Like
Mhm.
a lot of the times you're podcasting with people that you know, of course, but also if you have a podcast or even if you put yourself out there to be a guest on other podcasts, it's like that's a way to have a coffee chat or something with somebody that you otherwise wouldn't have had access to. Like
Mhm.
we don't always have endless time in our days to just be meeting other business owners. But when it's like, this is going to be a podcast that is published, it's like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, yeah. And you're forming relationships in a really, really cool way that's mutually
Mhm.
beneficial for both you and the podcast host.
I feel like it's such a quality way to grow a relationship or a connection and network as well, because even though podcasting is long form content, it's also long form connection as well, right?
Hmm.
So you're like, instead of sticking in the DMs, just like having a chat, like, oh, where'd you get that shirt from? Or, like little
Yeah.
conversations like that, which is great. And, going the extra mile of voice messages, great. But being on a podcast and like having that sit down and an actual face to face virtually conversation or in person conversation is just like it's a bond that cannot be broken after. I feel like it's just so it goes way beyond that and it kind of sticks with you.
Hmm.
And it goes more than just like a message here and there. There's like the planning before and after and having this like final product that you're both so very proud and excited about is just like such an amazing feeling, isn't it?
Oh, for sure. And the conversations go deeper than even if you just had like a casual Zoom date with somebody that you met on Instagram, right? Because it's
Mhm.
intentional. When you're going on a podcast, you're going to be asked certain questions, and then those certain questions become other questions that were not planned for, but like you're getting right into the meat of things instead
Yeah.
of kind of having a lot of small talk and, not
Yeah.
getting to the point. But when you're on somebody's podcast, you're pretty quickly having like deep conversations about what you both do,
Mhm.
which is just so valuable. Like
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many podcasts I've listened to where I've gone and like followed the guest because I really liked their conversation. And from then, I'm invested in both the host and them. It's a great way
Yeah.
to grow your network.
Yeah, 100%. And even like through your social media, you really dive into so many logistics of what it takes to run a podcast and going into different mics for different environments and things like that. And I just feel like you are educating so much. And just for like us being on here today, perspective shifts, like different like hot takes and things like that, and being able to take that away from it and approach it into your everyday business is just the best thing. So, um,
Thank you.
yeah, and there's so many, like I said, there's so many logistics that go into
Mhm.
podcasting, and you do a great job of breaking those things down within your content. So I'd love for you to share with those who are tuning in, like what's happening in your world, how can they consume your content, and what are the things that you're preaching on a daily basis?
Oh my gosh, great question. So, if you want to continue hearing what I have to say, my Instagram, let me make sure I'm going to pull it up because I just changed my name back to what it was before. It is at I am Anna Corinne. Um, and yeah, I'm just sharing a lot about podcasting. If you're thinking about starting a podcast, this would be a great place to start. There's a ton of resources on that page. And right now, I am supporting my clients through monthly podcast management. So there's different tiers of that based on how much support they need. So that's an ongoing thing. Every week we are putting out episodes and making sure that it's consistent, it's reaching the goals that they want to reach. Everybody has different goals with their podcast, right? So it's kind of customized to what their specific goals are for their podcast. So I'm working really closely with them and Voxer every week, making sure that we are getting them there. And podcast launch clients. I am still working one on one with podcast launch clients, making their dream podcast happen for them. So, yeah, if you are looking to start a podcast or you have a podcast that you've kind of reached a cap with how much time and energy or just knowledge you have to continue to grow it and to reach your goals, reach out. My DMs are always open.
Amazing. I will definitely, link your socials in the show notes. But thank you so much, Anna, for being here. My past client, I just love seeing how much you've grown in such a short period of
Thank
time,
you.
like passion wise, business wise, energy wise. All of that is just so amazing. So I am so happy that we were able to have this amazing conversation today.
I am too. This is great. It was amazing to sit down with you again. I've really missed our little one-on-one calls.
Thank you so much. And yeah, thanks.
Yeah, thank you.